Welcome to Beyond Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petralis, and we are super excited for today's guest. First, I got to just kind of mention last night, AOA Studios in Beverly, Beyond finally taped their 200th episode. We got in the DeLorean, we kicked it back a little bit. We were at episode 205. We had to go back to 200, doing that live in studio. We did that with Mike Scarfo, who's part owner there, and was helped Beyond actually get off the ground. Taught me how to get everything on Spotify and Apple. So was a key component into my beginnings of not knowing anything about technology. He really helped me kind of get over that hurdle, and so we owe him a lot. I owe him a lot, and he's doing so well himself. So wanted to give that shout out, but. We have a tremendous guest on here today. We have a very good mutual friend who's been trying to connect us for a while, and busyness of life and everything else, and us getting busy and him getting busy. And he runs one hell of a football program, and that's kind of what we have him on here for today, and that's what we're going to talk about. I'm just going to give a little bit of an intro. You guys know how I love my intros. In 2021, Division 8 Super Bowl champion, first in school history at Randolph High School. In 2024. Just last year was back in the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, not the same result, but a very tough physical football team. I saw these guys play live. I got to see them on both sides of the football, and physicality and mentality is a huge part of this program. And reading a lot about this coach and doing my homework on him, this is someone who knows how to build a program and build a culture and how important that is. And we're going to deep dive into that today for sure. So, without further ado, from Randolph High School head football coach Jon Marshall, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks,
Um,
Anthony, and congratulations on 200 episodes. Very, very happy to be here. Happy we got to connect. We've been talking for a while, so really excited to be on here and highlight our program, the hardworking kids we've got at Randolph.
yeah, you do. And I have a Randolph story, so I kind of talked to you a little bit about this, off air. But in 2014, I won what's called the National Milk and Educator Award, and it's given to like one teacher in Massachusetts throughout. I think you know what it is, kind of, because I see you nodding your head. Yes, so I think you know it. And
Yeah.
next year, I got invited to go to the one that happened for a teacher that won it there. And it was at Randolph High School. And so I drove there. I took a personal day from work. I drove because, I experienced it. I wanted to watch somebody else experience. I want to know who it was so I could like stare at them and watch them and just kind of live the moment with them a little bit, knowing that their life's about to change instantly. And her name is Michelle Ryan. I don't know if she's still a teacher there at all. Do you know who she is? Do you know who I'm talking about?
The name is familiar. I believe she was the former history department head prior to me coming on board. I think we just missed each other, but her
Okay.
name echoes through the halls and is kind of a legend, especially if you talk to some of the veteran teachers there.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, it's great to see how people move up maybe in position when they get something like that. And that's awesome. And then I didn't realize in 2022, there was another winner of the Milken Award in Randolph, and it was in an elementary school. Her name was Taylor Ty. Did you know about that at all? Did you guys hear?
I
Was there a
I did
buzz?
know about the award, but I don't know Taylor though. Yeah, but I did know
Okay.
because we do a pretty good job in our district of highlighting the victory. So anytime somebody gets an award, things like that, you get the all staff publication. So yeah, we have some great teachers in Randolph, and I think it's a testament to they truly believe in education with the doors it can open, and you see the hard work a lot of our teachers put in the district, and it's inspiring to me. I can't imagine for some of the kids too.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, that award is very rare. So to see that award, that was 2015 and then that was 2022. So within 7 years, the winner in Massachusetts happened to be in the same city. I mean, that's really rare, like just from winning the award and kind of knowing that. So that does speak volumes to, obviously the educators that Randolph choose to hire and educate these children, and obviously coaching. And we're going to jump into you. So I wanted to give them their flowers, give Randolph their love. We have that connection, okay? But I want to talk about you because there's some amazing stuff here. There's some cool stuff that reading articles and listening to things that you've said and watching the programs that you've built. There's such cool like culture stuff. And I think my audience really talks about that a lot when I, dive into with coaches with this stuff. And I think you're like the perfect guy to do. So let's just jump into, the 2021 season before we jump into that Super Bowl season for you that run. I think you were like a 10 seed. You were, a 500 team going into the playoffs. But The season before that was that COVID year, and COVID year was crazy for all coaches. And truthfully, that's when this podcast was kind of started, was
Mm.
really talking to like coaches, like how are you educating your team, keeping your kids active without actually physically being able to be together and so on. And that was tough. And then you had that like fall two season that was in the freezing temperatures of, you don't start typically a football season when it's, freezing out. So it is a little bit different. That's always difficult. But you kind of, I think you went 1-5 in that area. And I read that you didn't really have a lot of the numbers. I think like 16, 17 kids maybe in the entire program at that point. And then boom, all of a sudden that following season, 500 team that makes a run and wins it. Talk about that a little bit, building a culture. I mean, being a coach in that time
Yeah.
and how quickly you were able to kind of flip the script.
Yeah, and so I was hired in the summer of 2020. So I think we can all remember what that was kind of like.
Right.
And so like you said, we had to build a culture and start building a team. So we would do weekly Zoom calls in the summer because, we weren't allowed to go into the weight room and things like that. So how do you start building a culture of a team? So we would do like weekly film sessions, and I would always start with about a 20-minute discussion on character. I'd pick a topic, whether it was, what does commitment mean? What's loyalty mean? What does effort mean? And just do a 20-minute talk. And then we would do about 20 minutes of film. And then honestly, just about 20 minutes of just talking with the team because we were all socially isolated at that point,
Right.
and just to start building the bonds of the team. So kind of using technology as a way to bridge the gap. Zoom was, coming about and all those things. We were eventually allowed to do some outdoor conditioning. And, if you want to talk about a challenge, you're a first time head coach in COVID, which is, the unprecedented times. So
Right.
how do you build a culture, let alone you're a new coach teaching a new playbook,
Right.
new scheme, getting, I knew the kids because I was an assistant beforehand. I was offensive coordinator prior to that appointment. So I did know the kids a little bit. So that at least was a little bit easier to do. But I can distinctly remember in the summer of 2020 doing our summer conditioning program, which is like a mark of our program. We really believe in our summer conditioning program, and having to paint 6-foot circles in the grass field so everybody can socially distance, and dragging 45-pound plates and putting them in those circles, and like doing a workout spread out with, and I didn't have a lot of kids, probably like 10, 11 kids would come to these things, and
Right.
we'd be spread out in a field, doing workouts, like just some variation. And in the back of my head, I'm sitting there like, we're not pushing enough weight. And I had to take that step back and say, no, we're just together, right? Like we're just in it together when everybody else is apart. So just finding those ways to connect the team. And then transitioning into that spring football season, which was a challenge. It was a real challenge. We had kind of a semi-independent schedule. So I had to find teams that had opening weeks. We played some league games, some not. And every week was a new challenge because we only had 17 kids. We had 17 kids. That is K through 12 playing football in the town of Randolph. The youth program had kind of closed its doors a few years prior to. So that was it. If you were a football player in Randolph, you were one of those 17 kids in the snow. We had to plow our field ourselves. We took Agile one bags to plow the field out to make a practice area just 20 yards because there was caked on ice and snow, and you can't plow a turf field. You'll tear up the field.
I
So
mean, are
we,
you that type of guy in general? Like, just because like this is
yeah.
your first year head coach. I mean, just to like listen to that and hear that, you haven't even played a game for all intents and purposes, and you're asking these kids. I mean, these kids are coming out in the worst of temperatures, the worst of everything. No youth program. You're plowing your own fields. I mean, did you in your head think this is what you signed up for in a sense?
I don't think anyone could predict that situation, but
Yeah.
to me, and this is, kind of drawing on my military background, like you just find a way, right? Like if you look for an excuse, you'll always find one, but you just got to find a way,
Love it.
right? That's what you really got to look for. So, we could have made an excuse. There's snow on the field. I think we only did one practice in the gym ever that whole season because that day it was like an actual snowstorm. Oh, other than that, we practiced outside every single day. And it was very weird to be in a season where the weather progressively got nicer.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like usually in the football season, like it's getting colder, right? And
Yeah,
now we're here starting out in the snow, and by the end of the season, in the end of April, it was beautiful out.
yeah.
So that was kind of a different challenge in itself too, because then it started getting hot at games, right? And
Right.
you'd get used to the cold. So kids are catching cramps, and we're thin to begin with. So it definitely presented its unique challenges, but we just found a way. And we really believed that we wanted to treat that season almost like spring football for a college team. We had, kids starting that had never played football before in all reality and playing against varsity teams. He looks at some of those scores from that season. We definitely got it taken to us. And that was a great reflection for me to learn too as a coach of how to adapt to certain things in the most, quite literally unprecedented of times.
Right. I mean, and there's no playbook for that. And that's what I used to say to a lot of coaches that came on. It's not like you're like, oh, I'm going to follow kind of what, like, no one really knew what to do. Like, if you were technology savvy, you were at an advantage, because you could get your team on there and be able to show film, like, so coaches that kind of, know how to integrate technology into their programs or have coaches that are capable of doing that. Yeah, they were totally at an advantage for that. So now you come into, you treat that like a spring season, and I think that's a great way. A lot of coaches I know that kind of said something similar. You get into your fall season, and numbers probably went up a little bit, from what obviously you had. Um, and you team plays good football, and what I notice, and we can kind of talk about this in a bigger picture in a few minutes. But your non-league schedule and kind of teams that you play and building your program up, I think is really impressive and interesting. And I want a deeper dive into that. But this is a football team that went 4-4, and from what I read, was injury riddled a little bit. Obviously, any football team who is a little banged up during a season and loses some of their better players, it affects obviously maybe your identity and who you are. But even with key injuries, you guys battled and fought and got yourselves a 10 seed. I mean, talk about that, getting the seed that you got, seeing your maybe football team playing their, first four games versus their last four games, and where you thought you were at that point. Because then you went on a run, a miracle,
Yeah.
I'm not a miracle run, but a big run to the point that you avenged a loss earlier in that season to a team that beat you, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Yeah.
very cool stuff. But talk about where your football team was before playoffs, because we'll connect that to where you are a little bit now as a program. But talk
Yeah,
about
for
that.
sure. Yeah. So like you mentioned, we were 4-4. We lost our first game by 1 point.
Yeah.
And what I always love about that season is that after we lost that first game by 1 point, and to bring it back, we won our final game of the spring season on a walk-off pick six. So we were 0-5 going into our final game of that spring COVID season. We won on a walk-off pick six. And then carry that over. Like you said, numbers did go up a little bit. We got into about the 20s. We only carried about 22 kids that whole season, that 2021 season. So, a little increase in the numbers. So we lose the first game by 1, but it was actually the players, and they got together and they had a team meeting and they said, we're not doing this again. We all started last year, it was sophomores that are now juniors now seniors. And that 1 point loss kind of was a catalyst for the rest of the season, in that it's going to take every single effort that these kids can put forth, whether it's watching film, at practice, weight room, all sorts of stuff. And that really built it up. And we had some injuries during the regular season that held us back. Um, Malik White was our starting running back. He
Yeah.
missed a few games because he had an injury in our Brighton game. Chris Paul was our starting tackle. He missed a few games due to an injury. So we had to move some guys around. So we really didn't feel like we got our full team until the playoffs. Once we kind of hit that like second week of the playoffs, we had everybody on board. But that just spoke to the tenacity of those kids. Um, they worked really hard in that summer between 2021 and the two seasons there. That's really where like our summer workout culture got built, and seeing the kids invest their time in the weight room. And I think because they were in such good shape, that's what kind of propelled us as we went through that season.
Yeah, so you talk about off season and how important that is, and I've heard you say it a couple times now. It starts with anything to me starts with either like a good logo or a good saying or a good slogan. And you guys have the mentality of winners do more. I love that. I think that is spot on to what a team's identity should be. If you want to be great, you got to be willing to do more than everybody else to be great. And I think that hits really well. Talk about your off seasoning in the summer, because I saw you mention multiple sport athletes, a big thing that you're supportive and you think that's really important. And I agree with you totally. So the summer workouts is when everyone's kind of free and ready. They start getting ready for ball a little bit. So talk about how an off season looks for you as you kind of build up to the summer.
Yeah, it's great. And I think the first part of our off season is being a multi-sport athlete.
Yeah.
It's my belief there's no substitute for competition. So I don't care what sport you play, we want you to play something. So if it's in the winter, we love our linemen to wrestle, we love our skill guys to do basketball or track. And then in the spring, we pretty much as a team do spring track. And that kind of builds us into the off season in the summer. And then in the summer, we have the guys in the weight room about 4 days a week. We do 3 days of strength training and plyometric training. And then one day out of that week, we hit the pause button. We actually do a character development program that I've built. So instead of going out and, running your 40-yard dashes out on the field, we hit the weight room and then we do about a 45-minute character building session. So we'll take one of our four core values. You mentioned one of them, winners do more. Everything we do is for improvement. We practice successful habits 100% of the time, and mental strength is our greatest strength. And we'll take one of those topics, and myself or an assistant coach will present on that topic and connect it to life, connect it to football. So we really try to take like a holistic approach with it. That being said, our weight room atmosphere is very electric. We've had
Yeah.
guys who've come from other schools, because we're in Randolph, it is a bit of a transient community, and I can talk a little bit more about that later. But kids come and go from our community, and they come and they go. Your weight room is an amazing vibe.
Mhm.
We push some weight around there, and it gets hyped. Honestly, it's my favorite time of the year because I work out with the kids, so like I
Yeah.
get a chance to like get in a little shape myself going into the season, and kind of lead from the front there. So I really like that. And our kids, they get after it in there. And it's become a culture thing. Like it's no longer me pushing that message. My captains, guys like Aiden Davis, Abe Cornett, Alan Nariska, are making sure kids are coming to the weight room and getting that weight training in.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome. You guys should video that. You guys should videotape and put that and post that on social so people can see like, God, what an attraction for people to want to
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
play
We
for you
try.
guys.
Yeah. We try to. It's like, the reality of it is like, it's even being the athletic director, it's kind of a one-man shop, especially in the
Yeah.
summer when everybody's gone. I have awesome assistant coaches, but I also want to be mindful of their time. They get
Mhm.
their time with the family too. So not to lean too much on them in the off season, things like that, because it's a lot. What we do in the season is a lot.
And you mentioned coaching staff, and I kind of wrote this down here. You are very complimentary of your coaching staff. I know even when you won the Super Bowl and or other big games, and talking about, my coordinator, my well, either side of the ball, or just kind of talking about, guys and giving praise. I mean, talk about a coaching staff building for you because you definitely are a high energy guy, and you seem like you're, like you said, like a one man show, and you need to be a one man show and doing your thing, but obviously surrounding yourself with good number twos and number threes and people that are willing to kind of put in the same type of work on film or in other aspects of the team. So what do you look for in coaches?
I truly look to build a diverse staff in all sense of those words. So I don't want to have just teachers in the building. I don't want to have just football guys. I try to look for a wide variety of experience, but the number one driving factor for me is, are you a good role model to put around these young men? Are you someone that some kid, and it doesn't have to be all of them, can look up to as some kind of inspiration and get something out of? So I have like my defensive coordinator, Lou Adeviani. He's a teacher in the building, grew up in Hopkinton, played football out there, been coaching a long time. He was the Mass High School Coaches Association Assistant Coach of the Year a couple of years back. So he's very knowledgeable and he's in the building. We've got another teacher in the building, Pat Barnes. He's a math teacher. He's kind of played at Marshfield, played at Curry. So he's kind of a young guy. But then I have a bunch of alums and community guys. So I have like Fernando Rodriguez, Derek Revelis, who played at Nichols College and was the NCAA statistical leader in blocked field goals. So
Wow.
like, and
Okay.
so he's got like cool story. Michael Robinson, and then every coach needs an old guy on staff. Let me say veteran guy. Rick Goggins' son was Paul Goggin. He was the captain of our Super Bowl team, and he's been coaching for 42 years. He likes to remind me that he's been coaching as long as I've been alive. Uh, and he's kind of our veteran guys on staff. And then we have some people on town from the town that help out too, that volunteer. I've got Matt Rodman, who's one of my assistant coaches. We went to Norwich together. He played football up there. He's on the police force. I've got Aaron Christian, who's currently running for town council in Randolph. And then we brought on a new coach this year, Uzziah Hilliard, who played at Brockton and Framingham State. So what I'm really appreciative of is like, wow, that sounds like a big staff. I only have 5 paid positions, and that
Yeah.
includes me. We deal with a limited budget, but I have many of those guys I listed off are true volunteers. They don't take a single dime to coach football, and we work a lot. We practice a lot. We have mandatory study hall. So, your question of what do I look for is, are you a great role model and can you give everything to this? Because at the end of the day, we are entrusted with what will be these kids' ultimate athletic experience. Only 3% of them are going to go on to play college football from high school, but 100% are going to go on to be young men of character. So I need to make sure I put young, role models around them and men of character for them to have a great person to look up to and teach the game at the same time.
I mean, you get like great people in the community, a police officer in the community, people live in the community. How you guys very involved in community events, like off season wise or in the summer? Are you like entrenched in the community with different
Yeah,
things?
that is something that is very important to me. I've always said that athletics is the front porch of the school. It's not the thing that is the most important that happens in school. That's the learning that goes on,
Yeah.
but athletics is the front porch. It's the part everyone sees. If you Google a school, typically, the athletic results are what are going to pop up first, whether it's from a local news source or a bigger news source. So, you have to be forward facing with that. And we feel the most important thing to do is be interconnected to our community. And a perfect example I could give that is our crucial catch game 2 weeks ago. We ask people from the community that have been affected or are survivors of breast cancer to come and be our honorary game captains. So we've done this now for about 4 years. So we had some ladies from the community. We had four of them come. They were our game captains for the week. They came out for the coin toss. They gave the pregame speech before. I didn't say anything. It was just all
Yeah.
them, and talking
That's
about it.
nice.
And many of them are alums from Randolph High too. So to kind of come back in the school, go down in the locker room, is a real nice point. We have their families there and everything like that. But just those little touch points where you can connect the team to the community because it is the community who supports this program, whether it's through fundraisers or just making sure we have the resources. We've had people drop off lunch for our kids. It's just those little community connections. That's the great part about coaching high school football.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. That was like always my part, especially being an educator myself, was getting the kids involved in community stuff. I think that's so important. And, when you see certain kids walking around with jerseys on and then you're having success on top of it a little bit, there's just more of an attraction of like, what's this? I want to be a part of something a little bit bigger. So I'm all for that type stuff. And just to close out 2021 a little bit, I didn't say this in the intro, and I'm so mad at myself because I pride myself in intros. But that year that you won the Super Bowl as well, you were also the New England Patriots Coach of the Year, I believe. And a part of that, you got to go to the Pro Bowl. Did you go to the Pro Bowl?
That was awesome. Yeah. So
Yeah.
after we won the Super Bowl, that Sunday, I think we played on a Wednesday. That Sunday, the Patriots sent me an email. Mr. Tippett just sent me an email saying, you're going to be our coach of the year. What was great was that was my birthday. So it was a great
Oh,
birthday
wow.
present to get. Yeah, that was pretty cool. So we went down to the Pro Bowl. My wife and I took care of everything. They flew us out to Las Vegas for the Pro Bowl that year. That was the year like Mac Jones was in the Pro Bowl and a couple
Yeah.
other Patriots still got to see those. But it was a really cool experience because each NFL franchise sends their own nominee for what's the Don Shula Award, which is the high school coach of the year for the whole country.
Yeah.
So I had to put together a package for that, kind of do like an interview to like Tony Dungy, like all these, a really cool experience to just, I'm sitting there as literally I had, about a year and a half into my head coaching experience with next to guys who've been coaching 30, 40 years. And, unofficially, they kind of told you off the side, like you came in fourth for the Don Shula Award.
Oh,
So the
wow.
guy who won it was like a 35-year veteran who'd sent players to the NFL and like rightfully deserved there. I'm like, I'm just happy to be here. Like that's it.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Heck
And
yeah.
we got to see like the Pro Bowl practice and the game. And it was really, really amazing experience. And what was great is, my wife and I got some time away, which is always important.
In Vegas.
In Vegas. Yeah, in Vegas, which I love the food in Vegas. Like that's it. I'm not too much of a table guy, but find me a good place to eat, and that's what we'll talk about.
Oh, I'm sure there was plenty there. I'm sure there was. I mean, God, and you're right when you said, like, think back to where you were in like March of
Right.
where that program was and where you were, and probably like, God, this is gonna be, this is gonna be a rebuild. And then here you are in Vegas with your wife at the Pro Bowl. being celebrated fourth. And I wrote down the Don Shula. I didn't realize you came in fourth. I mean,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable when you really think about it, even more so. But yeah, incredible. And obviously, something you'll never forget, something you'll never forget. But
No, no, definitely
yeah,
once in a lifetime thing. Yeah.
yeah, it's awesome. What I kind of want to talk about a little bit is culture because when you have success, sometimes sustaining success and building success, it can be tough. It can be tough to kind of keep it going a little bit. And I know that you had a couple of down years. And I don't mean to bring that up in a negative way, but I bring that more up in a sense of a program. I coached 15 years. I've seen the roller coaster of up and down, the peaks and valleys. But you have your program the last couple of years very dominant. I look at your non-league schedule and I think it's very deceiving in a sense because you play some very tough teams and some teams that if you're not a high school football person, you wouldn't know playing a Mashpee or playing a South Shore team, especially going down and playing them in the South Shore with
Right.
refs and everything else is very difficult. And so you don't shy away from playing a tough schedule. And I think that that needs to be said before we kind of even jump into this. But talk about that a little bit. You have the highs, but sometimes in programs dealing with the lows a little bit too.
Yeah, and when especially when you're coaching high school football for a town, your only talent pool is the people living there, and you have to ride that out. So I've always believed that we do have the talent in the building. It was setting that talent up to be successful. And I just think creating a structure around it and what those expectations are. And that's one thing I think we communicate out very well is, we really hammer I call it there's three sides of our triangle. So at the base is the character, like that character development, and then being a student, and then being an athlete. And that's what kind of builds out the triangle for us. And we said the wider you can build your base of character and then student and athlete, like the more you'll win up top. So providing that structure, even with some of those down years. So after the Super Bowl, we went 2-6. We didn't make the playoffs. We were riddled with injuries that year. And to be very fair, there was some complacency there. And it was a good wake up from me as a coach because I'm continuing to learn and develop in my role and always want to be a student of the game of how do you motivate people who are successful, right? That's
Mhm.
really hard. It's easy to motivate somebody who's not been successful yet, but when the success is there, how do you continue to motivate and drive? And I think a lot of that comes down to communication and ownership, right? It has to come from the players. It has to come from your leaders. So we always make sure that we pick leaders who are going to carry forth that message. They don't even have to be the best player. They don't even have to be a senior. If you're a kid who does the right thing all the time and can motivate others to do the right thing, you'll find a role on our team. It does not matter what kind of stats you can put up.
Yeah, and I think what you said earlier that was so interesting too is the fact that like how big or small the role is, it doesn't matter. But when you are trying to like develop a program and build a program, consistency is key. And, sometimes the years that you do have, the years that you kind of said you have the talent pool, it's keeping them motivated. But yeah, once you're successful and on top of the mountain, how do you then continue to say, well, this is what got us here, and we got to continue and even like you say, winners do more to get there. I find that great. I find that, you know it's tough. I mean, I was a couple years coaching that you have success and then you don't. And all of a sudden, kids don't maybe want to play, or maybe all of a sudden, kids aren't doing it the way that you want them to or hoping to. And to balance that ship can be tough. But the last couple years, you've had a lot of success. And even last year, I saw you guys play live in the Final Four game. And then obviously seeing you, I actually got probably about 7 or 8 minutes in the fourth quarter. I was right in the end
Hmm.
zone. I mean, I was there, we were there covering Shawsheen Tech. They had brought us in to kind of cover their Super Bowl run. So I got to watch your game right beforehand and, a game that you guys fought hard and battled back. But talk about your success into last season, jumping into this season, because obviously there's sustained success. I mean, I think it's something like you're 15-2 or 16-2 in these two seasons. So obviously something's clicked last season that will jump into its continuing this season.
Yeah, it's the kids. I'd
Yeah.
love to sit up here and say it's a scheme, it's what we do. It's the kids, right? We
Yeah.
have amazing student athletes, and they are exactly what I envision a great football player looking like and things we've talked about. So, I'll just talk about like some of my, kind of captains, like kid like Alan Nariska, who's our starting D end and fullback for us. He's also a South Shore League All-Star in wrestling. He's also a member of our 4x1 state championship relay team and track. He's also an AP level student. Like
Yeah, so
it's
he's
just like
legit.
that. I
Yeah.
mean, you love those kind of kids. Our running back Makai White, same deal. He's an absolute phenom on the track, a phenom on the field, but he also takes AP level classes, and he's involved in community service. Quarterback, same thing, Abe Cornett. You just look for these guys who are multi-sport athletes and doing it. And they also work out on their own. So they're in school at 6 a.m. before school starts, hitting the weights. Then they go to a full day of school, and then they go to their their winter or spring sport. So that's what we mean when we say winners do more. I don't ever want a kid just to be a football kid. I want them to be a football player and a basketball star or a track star or a wrestling star and high academic success. Our goal this year is to have a 3.0 team GPA. It's actually our first goal. So we have things like mandatory study hall. We do grade checks with the kids every other week. We have the National Honor Society come in and tutor some of our kids that might be struggling. So, we really do take this holistic approach and who loves that? The parents, like
Yeah.
because I can tell them, I tell the parents year, I'm going to make you a guarantee. Your kids are going to come home tired and their homework's going to be done. And that's usually what we mean by like character development because it is hard to do all those
It
things and
is.
your character's revealed in those kind of tough choices. And that's where we feel like we can, really take these young men that come in freshman year and by the time they leave senior year, they're prepared for the real world.
Yeah, and I think that that's what parents want. Like they want structure for their kids, and that's not easy. Like I say this a lot, and this is part of the coverage we do and why we do it is a student athlete's expected to wake up, go to school all day, then represent their school in a whole different way that other kids aren't expected to, right? To conduct themselves with respect and dignity and pride and represent their city or town the way that they're supposed to. And then when they're done practicing to be better at that and doing that and having high expectations, they then have to go home and academic rigor and eat and maybe have a social life and maybe obviously having to communicate with their family. So that is something that is every single day. And if you're a multiple sport athlete, you are doing that structure of your life pretty much consistently during a school year that leads you into being more successful and motivated to do that in the summer because you understand that work and ethic and how that belongs. Is that pretty fair to say of your athletes in your programs?
Yeah, I think it's fair, and that's where we come down to like the winners do more thing, and
Right.
that's that we constantly stress that. And I have kids who play. It's like, well, coach, I just want to focus on XYZ sport, right? Whatever it is. And I'm like, I'm not telling you not to focus on that. I'm telling you to do more, right?
Right.
And if you want to be successful, you're going to have to do more. Being the history nerd that I am and military guy, like there's a quote from Sun Tzu I have in my coaching book: "Every battle is won before it is fought." And it's that preparation, it's that work. Especially when you have a smaller roster and most players are playing both ways. We haven't really had a boom in numbers participation. We're about 40 kids, and that's
Yeah.
9 through 12, right? So we're not, a real big program. When I first started coaching at Framingham, we had 110 kids on the football team,
Right. It's just like,
So it's like to take 40, I'm like, and most of them are going to play both ways. Like you got to be prepared. We played 163 snaps last Friday night. That's a long game. That
yeah.
is a long game. And all of these guys that are really good players are going both ways. So they have to be in shape for that.
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about that. I mean, we talk about the teams that you're playing in your non-league. I mean, some games, yep, you've kind of run through opponents and maybe did what you were expected to do. But I'm so interested. We talked about this before, but building a non-league schedule for you, or maybe looking at teams. I noticed Cohasset is a different team that's on the schedule this year, but Mashpee consistent. This is the first year you guys beat Mashpee that I was
Mhm.
tracing back and saw in Max Preps. But it seems like you kind of methodically look at certain teams to play or games, or you want battle-ridden teams for your team to go against. Talk about that mentality because I know points comes into play and there's
Sure.
so many other factors. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious of your thought process with that.
Yeah, I think building a schedule, and especially in my role as the athletic director, I have more of a hand in that
Mhm.
too than probably another head coach might. We play in the South Shore League, so South Shore League is like Cohasset, Mashpee, Carver,
Right.
Hull. Our league is, in my opinion, the best small school league of football.
I
There is
agree.
not a single. This is an insane stat, and I bring it up to my team all the time. There's not a single team in our league that has not been to or won a Super Bowl in 5 years. So
Yeah.
every team has, so there is a kid on every single team that we play in the league of those teams I just listed off that's been to Gillette. Right. If you think about
Wild.
that, right? Like
Wild.
there are leagues that have never sent anyone
Yeah.
to an actual state title game, right?
Yeah.
And everyone we play. So we know when we get to league play, in like the last 2 weeks with Cohasset and Mashpee,
Yeah.
both of those teams were ranked number one in D7. So the division higher than
Right.
us when we played them both, that we have to be at our best. So we kind of try to ramp up our schedule into the league play because we know we're going to get great football. And that's the whole thing is like, can we go down to Mashpee, Cohasset, Carver, Hull, and play against a team that is very good and give them a great game? And the answer has been yes, because of the work we do, right?
Right.
Our theme this year is work to win, right? Like if you have talent, you are in a good position. But if you don't work, you're not going to be successful. So, we have our winners do more overall team mantra and those values, but every year we pick a theme. And this year it's work to win. And
Yeah.
our guys have really embraced that. We tested out, I think we had 17 kids in the 1,000 pound club going into this season. So
Wow.
like that, like it becomes just a physics problem at some point, right? You have
Right.
to be
Right.
bigger,
Right.
faster, stronger. And when you're going up against a team whose roster has 50 kids, 60 kids, and you only have 40, that can be a challenge, right? So that overall conditioning definitely plays a factor into it.
God, I can see why you were hired as the athletic director. I mean,
Yeah.
and I mean that's like because it's like here you are, like you're just hearing your program and how it works and how it's built and the mentality of it to then see that success kind of happen over time. Again, I said before, record could be deceiving in some of those seasons because of the teams that you play and who you put on your schedule. Where some coaches and teams put cupcakes on there because the
Mhm.
that column, the W means more, but for coaches that like want to be playing late in the season in the cold weather, they know that those games that they play in September and early October are going to be the same gritty type of teams or games that they're going to be playing like late in the season. So
Yeah, for
I
sure.
that's just such a great mentality of yours. I mean, being the athletic director, is that like a thing you try to instill in a lot of these other programs? Is hey, I've been there, I've done it, this is what we can do, I know how to do it. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And it's kind of humbling for me. So this is my 17th year of coaching high school sports. And being in my new role now as the athletic director is taking some of that lessons from football and coaching in Randolph specifically and applying it to other sports. And, we're really trying to invest it. The reality is many of our sports have had some struggles over the past few years, but like building that base because we're in this urban school district, there's not a lot of youth sports offering in town, so we're trying to do things in the athletic department organically, like do youth clinics and stuff
yeah,
like that and bring in outsiders. So like I have a meeting next week with the Patriots about starting youth flag football and like little things like that to just start building some of that culture up now across like the whole program. And I love that. Like I love building up something and seeing it successful. And it just means a lot more. And it's one reason I've really enjoyed being the head coach at Randolph and now my new role. And I can't thank the administration enough for trusting me with that because it's a really important role. And anytime a kid walks into my office and they seem upset about something, like treating that with true earnest and honesty, because this is it for many of the kids. This is their last athletic experiences in high school. And so you want to make sure they have a good experience. And whether they win or lose could be determined on roster and schedule and all sorts of things. But did they just have a good experience? Can that kid walk across the stage on graduation day and say, I'm glad I was a student athlete at Randolph High School? And that's what drives me. Like, that's what really, really drives me as in my role as the athletic director.
that's great. Yeah, I mean, you can see it, I can feel it just like talking to you. I'm like, God, this guy, I could see him just turning things around quick. We mentioned the Patriots. I mean, we talked about the Patriots war before, but this past week you were, your victory over Mashpee, which I believe, like you said, was the first in school history of beating them. You got Patriots Coach of the Week. So talk about that. That's cool. I know coaches. I coach at Serge Clivio. I know he's received it before, so it is a cool honor.
Yeah, it is a great honor. And, I said it when I got the award is I know my name's on it, but it's reflective of the whole town, because it's not just me. I certainly did not score any touchdowns on Friday night or make any tackles. So, it is reflective of the team. And I really wanted to make sure. And also, like we talked about earlier, it meant even more because it was our breast cancer awareness game with the Crucial Catch Foundation. So, like, that even made it even more special. And, when they did their spot on Patriots All Access, they had the ladies in the video and thing like that. So like that's what I love is absolutely love that. It was good to have Mr. Tippett back. I did get to have my little joke and say, welcome back to Randolph, Mr. Tippett, because he came in 2021 to present me the Coach of the Year award. And that's the one joke I got to say there.
Hey,
And
it's a
then,
good one. It's a good
oddly
one.
enough, my wife and I went out to lunch after the award, and their whole crew was at the same place we got lunch
Oh,
in town.
wow.
so I was like, "Oh, hey guys,"
That's
But it
awesome.
was awesome. We had the whole team out there, cheerleaders, the administration, assistant coaches were out there, and it was just such an honor. And my family's kind of spread to the winds across the country, so everybody got to see the video and things like that, and got a lot of great text messages over the course of the week just congratulating me. And it's an absolute honor because you don't do it for those things. I don't do it for those accolades, but it is a nice to step back and go, wow, what we did was really special and it impacted a lot of people. And just to see that, in our players' faces, that's the best. That's the best award.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible stuff. And then obviously there's so many, factors like you said that went into that game and what the game represented on top of that, the first win in school history. I mean, all of that. God, Randolph people just know how to win big awards. I mean, whether it's in the academics in the classroom and the athletics, like guys are cleaning up over the last you guys might be Title Town in that sense, Title City,
Yeah, that's what they
whatever.
called us in 2021 because we won the state title in football and then we won the state title in basketball in the same
Oh,
year.
really? Oh,
And
wow.
like back to that multi-sport thing, seven of the kids on the basketball team out of like 11 or 12 were football players too.
Yeah.
So it was, like my total belief, right? Multi-sport athlete, like they won in football. And I think because it was the first state title in school history, our basketball team had always been successful. I think some of that kind of mentality carried them into it. And I certainly didn't have a hand in anything going on with the basketball season. But I think when you create that mantra and we believe that belief that you can win really pushed us forward. And, now the expectation is to win at Randolph. Before it was like, it'd be nice if we win and we could win. But now it is like, no, we expect to be in the playoffs for all of our sports. We expect to be successful. We expect kids to be South Shore League All-Stars and things like that. And changing that kind of culture has been awesome. And it's not something I've done by myself. I'm happy to lead it, but it certainly has been one of the rewarding parts of it is to know that when a kid steps foot on the field for a Randolph High School game, the expectation is to be successful.
Yeah. And I love you guys' uniforms too. I mean, you guys got sharp uniforms. I mean, look good, play good. I mean, people say that, but there's a truth to that. I think, color scheme and everything else is really
Oh yeah,
important.
we
It really
we
is.
love the swag. Love swag. I joke around and say my closet looks like Superman's closet. It's all blue, gray, and black. Like that's it.
Yeah.
When we're together as a team, you have to be in blue shorts and gray t-shirt. That is a no expectation to that. So no exception to that. So like we are all about the swag and uniformity. You can harken back to my military time. But it's just something of like you're giving up part of that identity to be part of a team. You're part of a new identity, is that is all of us together. Coaches have to be in black pants, gray shirts on game day. Like we are big about that kind of outward facing appearance. We go and on and off the field 2 by 2 wherever we go. We keep our guys together. So, just those little things I think are part of the culture of like there's a process for everything we do. And one of my assistant coaches, he calls me Captain Conformity because it's like, no, if we're doing that, this is how it's done. Like this is what the locker looks like. This is what this looks like. It's
Right.
just it because if you can alleviate, and this gets into a bit of a like leadership psychology, if you can alleviate your players' decision making for things they shouldn't spend mental time on, like what am I wearing to practice, that frees up their ability to focus on the things that are important. So instead of an hour before worrying what you're going to wear to workouts and is the drip going to be right, it's like nope, my blue shorts, gray shirt, let's go. And now I can just focus on what I'm going to be pushing in the weight room.
That's, I mean, it's great, and that's time wasted, like you mentioned. Like there is so much time wasted in things, and there's a whole psychology to even how you pass the papers out, like in a classroom or whatever, and
For
how like
sure.
efficient and quick, and like that's important. It does. It saves time, and people have an expectation. Um, I was on the phone with my good buddy from Kip Academy, Jimmy Rabbit, and we were talking a little bit about his season, and he was talking about D8, and he's like, D8 is a wagon this year, and he's like, you got teams just knocking off teams and all. And he specifically spoke about you guys. Your last two games, I went back and kind of dig and did a little bit of research. Obviously, we mentioned Mashpee, the first in history, and then beating Cohasset 28-27. Physical seemed like kind of like that type game, that back and forth, and who was just going to be a little bit tougher. And in those games, I wrote down some stats here. 450 yards, we'll call it rushing. I know your back had a big game last week, and he was a little dinged up at 7 touchdowns. I mean, obviously, you seem like you're a gritty team. I look back, you shut some teams out, you shut some teams down, low scoring games. So it seems like both sides of the football, you are a kind of line up on the line of scrimmage, smash mouth. We're gonna pound the rock, or defensively, we're gonna be in your face the entire game. I mean, does that seem to kind of be your team's mentality on the field?
Yeah, that's fair, and I think why we are that way is look outside your window right now. It's New England, right? It's not
Right,
Florida, it's not Texas, and you have to be able to run the ball, right? You have to be able to run the ball, and when you are very blessed to have the line we do, the backs we do, it's easy to figure out what we're gonna do. Yeah, so and we believe that, and then on defense, we're gonna kind of morph to whatever the opponent is that week, and look to see what they do well, try to take that away. So, there is I couldn't say we're this defense or that defense because we
yeah,
morph week to week on based upon what we see. And that's really a testament to our players and like their football acumen and how much, we call it FBI football intelligence, right?
right.
How much they understand the game and if we're in this kind of coverage or front. So that's what we look at week to week.
Yeah, and I argue, even going back to something you said before that I forgot, and you just triggered it, is you mentioned working on leadership with them instead of maybe going out and running sprints or going out and doing something. You're focusing more on the mental aspect of the game. And then
Mhm.
here you are talking about that football intelligence, which any football coach knows there is some programs that lack it, or some kids who might be your best players or best athletes who lack that knowledge of football intelligence, and being able to sit and teach leadership and preach leadership, and also being able to kind of get your playing IQ up. That's something that is so underestimated that I think people don't realize. Is we assume, like in classroom, I always say to like other teachers, like we assume kids know how to work in groups or partners. Like, oh, go work with this kid, go work with it. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think's gonna happen when you go over there and they're like, what are you doing this weekend? What are you like? They're not
Right.
talking, like, so you have to like teach that. Like, if you want someone to be a good leader, you just can't expect that they're gonna wake up in the morning and just be a good leader because it's their time. Like,
Yeah.
that's just like not how it works. So you see the success, you see how tough your football team is. You're 5-0. Like I said, I think you're 15 or 16-2 over the last couple seasons. I mean, that kicks in a little bit, right? I mean, that's fair.
No, no, for sure. And it's my belief, and because of where I've coached before and my experiences at Randolph, like you can be the fastest kid on the field, the strongest kid on the field. But if you don't have the academics, you're not going to step on the field, right? You're going to
Right.
be ineligible. You could be great in the classroom, but if you don't have the strength and speed, you're not going to be able to contribute. And so there's those things, but most importantly, your character. Like, what is it that makes a great leader? How much time are we really spending on that as a coach, as a program? It's something I'm bringing to the whole athletic department now with like a character development series for all the student athletes is because how many times have you seen a kid in a critical moment make a mistake and that takes them off the field? And the reality is the MIA is coming down on it, right? If you get 4 unsportsmanlike penalties, you're disqualified from the playoffs now. There are chemical health issues, all sorts of challenges off the fields can, you can just find teams that have been undefeated, ranked number one, and then something happens and now they're not in the
Right.
playoffs. And, I'm very honest, like anytime my team is going to go to a camp or something like that, the week before that, we do a whole lesson on hazing and
Mhm.
we show it. And this is like an anecdotal story and why I think it's important. So my first season as the head coach, right before our first game, the Thursday night before our first game, we had 4 players make a bad decision in the locker room. And when it was brought to my attention, I didn't even hesitate and I suspended him. Remember, 17 kids on the whole
Right,
team.
right,
And I just suspended four starters who are two-way starters because everybody was playing both ways if they were good. So in effect, I suspended eight starters for my team the night before my very first game as a head coach. To be honest, what they were doing in the locker room wasn't that big a deal. They were joking around, but it could be interpreted some way.
right,
It wasn't even a second chance for me. Like I didn't even second guess. I go, this is unacceptable behavior in our locker room, and you're going to be suspended for tomorrow night. What head coach does not want to win their first game?
right.
And it was a winnable game with a final was 12-8. So like that easily, you think like four starters, right? Like
Right.
including, some key contributors to the team. So like that moment for me too, as a coach, was like, I have to do the right thing. If I'm going to say I'm sitting here talking about character, I have to do that too. And I believe in my heart of hearts, if I hadn't suspended those kids, our success that we've had over the past few years never happens because
Yeah.
they would have known, hey, you can kind of get away with things here and there. And that's not the kind of program that we run.
Yeah, I mean, culture is so important. I mean, when I first got a head coaching job, and I knew this in my heart, but to hear so many coaches' advice was culture over winning, culture over winning,
Hmm.
culture over winning, and it's so true. I mean, in anything I do, I run a summer fun program with teenage counselors, and I've been doing it for 20 years, and you have a lot of them who stick on board 4, 5, 6 years. Sometimes you're like, whoa, you're still working here one more
Yeah.
summer? Like, let's go, because you think you're going to lose them to the real world a little bit. But that speaks volumes of like why they want to keep coming back and they enjoy the job and it's fun. And, that's important in a program. You want to continue to be there through the toughness of it, the best of it, and all of it. And you got to kind of, right the ship to do that. So that stuff's not easy. Obviously, your story's great. I mean, we kind of talked about obviously your coaching experience before then at Framingham and Holliston. Some good football in Holliston. God, when I coached at Allenton Catholic, man, this is like '06, '07, '08, '09. I mean,
Yeah.
we took quite a few trips down to Holliston because they had a humongous tight end one year who we were like, if we have to match up against, how are we going to cover this kid? And some years with quarterbacks, their offenses were just efficient and good. And, the spread was, then they were, a lot of those teams were. So, I'm familiar with that football. So a lot of experience. And then obviously coming to Randolph and kind of dealing with the COVID season and what that looked like. And what's your advice to young coaches out there who are looking to sink their teeth into the coaching world, whether they're young and starting a program or been an assistant for a little bit and starting a program?
Yeah.
What would be your biggest piece of advice to them that is a must or something that's important?
Yeah, that's great. And my biggest advice is understand when you become a head coach, about 50% of your job now has nothing to do with the field.
So true.
And so like it does, it's not like it's going to be coordinating
Yeah.
buses and talking to community members and getting like all the logistics around it because as the head coach, you are now also the GM of the team. So, 50% of your job is going to have nothing to do with actual X's and O's. If you want to be an X's and O's guy, become a coordinator. Like that's,
Yeah.
that's it.
That's it.
But if you have to have the bandwidth. So with that being said, make sure you hire a staff who understands your vision and carries out your vision. And I tell every coach that I hire when we interview, it's the last thing I say in the interview is we can disagree in private, but never in front of the kids. Like we are all on the same page. And part of that is the ownership I have to have of making sure our game plan is one bought into by all the coaches and clearly communicated. So no head coach can turn, no assistant coach can turn. Why are we doing this, right? So you have to, if you're going to become a head coach, understand all the logistics that it goes into running a program. Be ready for those phone calls from the newspaper. Be ready for why isn't my kid playing? All of those kind of conversations because you may think you're going to spend all this time in building it up, but really it's your coordinators and assistant coaches who are going to carry that water. So they got to be on board with what you're doing.
That's great. Yeah, I love asking that question because I never get the same answer, or I
Hmm.
get an answer that's similar, but obviously people adapted to, their situation and what they did. That's great. Are you a big music guy? Like, locker room game, big music. What kind of music you guys listen to, or is your music just so different than the kids type music that
I tell the guys, the players, their job is to keep me young. So they get it. I let them run the music. Usually, we pick a kid and go, all right, you're on aux today. Whether it's in the weight room or pregame and things like that. So they definitely have their playlist that they pick. And if I don't like the music, I joke around and I go, all right, coach is on aux today. And I have like a throwback Thursday playlist I'll put on in the weight room or something like that. And every teacher walks by, I was like, yeah, that's good stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's so,
Yeah, you get
I
the
like them.
teachers like bobbing as they're like walking by,
Yeah,
they like
exactly.
know the song.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I'm like, ask your parents about this one. But
Yeah.
no, I think, it's up to the kids to create the vibe. And so part of that is, letting them have control of the playlist. Like when we're in training camp and it's just out on the turf field, like we'll play music during practice. And I have no problem with that. And we've got great managers. They know when to turn on the music, turn off the music. But, I'll usually pick some kids, some of the leaders to be like, okay, you get to build the playlist. Just keep it clean, because we've got houses all around us. So, we got to
Yeah.
make sure we're representing well. But they get the music. I'm happy for them to do that. Lord knows if you gave me full control over the whole season, what that would end up being. I will say this: there are times that I've played classical music in the weight room, and one of our sayings we talk about, like the mental side of things, is environment should never dictate your effort. So we've played classical music at practice in the weight room just to see, can you still push 300 pounds on the bench if it's Mozart playing versus Chief Keef, right? Like, can you do that? And it's an interesting little, challenge. I'm trying to have you guys be tough in a way you might not necessarily divine as tough, right? That's like a certain level of mental toughness.
Yeah, and mental toughness for a young kid, they just like don't understand it unless it is really thrown at them. And that's when they really probably start learning the first lessons of who they are a little bit and how they react to things. That's great. And I love that because honestly, I mean, we're 200, you're episode 206, I believe. I haven't really heard too many coaches that train that aspect of a programmer in the game.
Mhm.
And obviously, your success in what you're building here, we're starting to see it. We've seen it, and we're starting to see it very consistently now. I think that speaks volumes into, having something like that that's not only sunk in here, luckily to your football program, but now your athletic department with you running that. I think that that's great. I think that that's yeah, we underestimate sometimes what we think kids know and we assume what they know. And those little things sometimes that we build or help build extra for are those are
Yeah,
the
you
things
just
that
can't
support
assume, right?
success.
Like you just
Right.
can't assume anything.
Yeah.
And I always remind myself it's not what you say, it's what you allow, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a big, driving factor. But like you said, you can't assume how kids are going to work in a group. You can't assume, especially for kids who may have never played any organized sports before, like their only experience might be like just pick up fast basketball or football, whatever. Like what does it mean to be a part of a team? And you define it out, and where are you taking the time to define it out versus going through cover three, like,
Yeah.
are you, because it's like, what do you think is going to have a more impact on the game? Players understanding hydration and nutrition, or who's got the hook to curl. I think
Right.
that's equal. Like, to be honest, I think it's equal,
Right.
right? Like, you
Yeah.
got to. So if you step back and look at how you spend your time as a program, and it's all on one side of that triangle, then you're out of balance, right? And you
Yeah.
got to take that time.
God, you said the hook the curl. There is no difficult more coverage to explain the safeties and linebackers of whose responsibility that like, when the kid catches the ball between that hook to curl and the safeties like
Oh
break
yeah.
into a post, like you're like that's linebacker depth, that's safety depth. Like,
Right.
God, that
Right.
is the hardest. That is the hardest thing,
Yep.
God,
Yep.
to tug. But I thank you for coming on here today. I mean, obviously, you guys are 5-0. You guys are clicking on all cylinders, as far as the physicality, some battle written games for you as you kind of jump into the second half of your season. I mean, what is it that and we can end on this. What's it that you look for the most in the second half of the season? You've kind of
Mhm.
been here now a little bit and had some success. You've seen some positive things. I'm sure you're going to go through film and find all the things you need to find to pluck out to get better at. But what's like, second half of a season, what are you really looking for in your football team going? And maybe nothing changes. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's some of it does change. We just say the pressure changes, right? And we always say pressure is a privilege because something is expected of you, right? So in the second half of the season, kind of that win or go home mentality becomes really important to us. We don't have a Thanksgiving football game, so if we lose in the playoffs, that's it. Like that's the
Oh
end of it.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, so that is kind of that mentality of like it is win or go home. It's not we lost in the semifinals, we'll just pack it up and get ready for fill in the blank rivalry school, but we don't have a Thanksgiving game. So, it is truly becomes win or go home. And we've been fortunate that we haven't had to play some of those consolation games because we've gone so far. So that mentality is a big shift. And we always say everyone's 0-0 now.
Right.
And one thing we really liked about our schedule the past few weeks is we played Mashpee, who was number one. We played Cohasset, who was number one.
Right.
And we talked about this is getting us ready for the playoffs because every week you're successful in the playoffs. Now your reward is you get to play a better team, right?
Right.
Like like teams don't get worse the further you go in the playoffs, they get better. So that's kind of why we like that schedule and set it up that way, is like it's a good rehearsal for the playoffs. So,
Yeah.
our players would say an easy answer to your question is elevate, right? It's gonna take more. And it's gonna take more. It's gonna be colder out. It's gonna get darker. Like that
Right.
mental aspect there is big, big time, especially get into November and hopefully December, right? As you get
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah, it's incredible stuff. I mean, that's how you build a program and you sustain that, is getting everybody on the same page and being everyone kind of rowing in the same direction. And that's just not easy. I mean, it's just as easy as you make it sound. In reality, it's very difficult. And you seem to kind of, you know what you're doing, and you're doing it very well. So I'm really, like I said, I was really happy to get you on here today. I think you got everything going in the right direction. And D8 is no joke. I mean, there are some teams in D8 right now that are balling out, including you guys. So particularly keeping it running the playoff run, keeping an eye on some of those teams, because there is going to be some
Yeah.
great battles as it gets, like you said,
Yeah.
teams are
Yeah,
going to
our
get better
division,
as they
it's,
go.
I know it's smaller school and things like that, but there are really good football programs. And,
Yeah,
just like any division, a couple players can swing a team either way.
right.
And, when you are at a small, one or two players can really swing a team, when you're only talking about rosters of 40 kids or so. So, it is good football.
Yeah,
It's very good football. It was an adjustment for me, definitely coming from bigger programs. But you really, and not to sound hokey, but realize the value of every single player on your team when you're
right.
only talking about 40 kids. And I say it all the time, you are the most important player on the Randolph High School football team. Whatever your role is, you are the most important player. And we say it to the kids, you are important, and that you're valued here, you're loved here, you're going to be coached hard, but you are important to what we do because everyone has a role and everyone will get something out of playing Randolph football.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time today and coming on Beyond Podcast. Episode 206, I believe. I got to make sure, but I think it's 206. I
Awesome.
feel like we've been pumping out so many these last couple of weeks and taping them. I'm kind of like forgetting what is what, but 206, I mean, that's great. But I thank you coming on here. I wish you the best of luck the second half of the season. I know you are going to be making a deep run, and it should be fun to watch. So I appreciate your time today.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah, no problem. So, guys, episode 206 in the books. Check out next week. We actually have Wilmington High School football. We have the captains of the team coming on here, so we're super excited for them. And a few other surprises. We don't want to spoil anything, but we have a few other things going on. I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis. Till next time.